Check, check, check. Cool. Ooh, that wasn't muted. Funny. Un momento, just doing a little bit of background. Yeah, we'll get right into it. And wow. Howdy. How you doing today? Me? Oh yeah, I'm doing great. Anyway, yeah, as the title says, I think it's time to reverse back to basics for a little bit. Reverse, revert. What do you want? Whichever works, right? So yeah, the plan's kind of just do some little things that I probably haven't done on the channel in a while, and maybe turn it into kind of a teachable moment for myself, for others, whatever it happens to be. Step 1, get hydrated. So here's what we're going to be looking at. Let's make sure that we're in the base namespace of dev services. And we have nothing in there, which is fine. That's kind of what we want at the moment. First thing I'm going to do is look at pods. What is a pod? A pod, generally speaking, and let's be honest, when you're creating a pod, you're just deploying a single application in that pod. A pod is a collection of containers, or has the ability to be a collection of containers. But for the majority of pods you're going to deploy, it's going to be a single container. If you want to do a stack of pods, that'll happen a lot of times. It seems to be kind of a design decision at this point, where you have the option of there being a pod with your app, and then a pod with, say, the database for your app, and then so on and so forth, and you segregate those down into a namespace, kind of extending the pod concept out into the namespace. But for the most part, well, and then there's other designs where the pod contains your application, your database, its Redis instance, whatever it needs to run in that pod, so that everything is contained. There's different reasons to do both. You can, if you have a single pod that holds each one of those things, it means that when there's one failure, everything fails and everything gets restarted, which can be great if you have 4 or 5 instances and they're being load balanced and everything's proper. It gets funky with data management, but as long as you write to prepare for that, or as long as your app is created with that in mind, it's not a big deal. A lot of containers aren't created that way. They're lift and shift, but let's go through. Let's just look at some of those basics. So the first thing we want to do is, okay, how do we create a pod? There's obviously lots of different ways to get this done, but let's do the most basic first. So, no. Create pod image. We're just going to use Nginx. So let's break that down even. We're calling kubectl, which is the basic way of interacting with the API via the command line. We're calling the create function. We're calling create. Create has the ability to create each one of these things. Cluster role binding. Here, let me do that again so it fits. Yeah, that looks better. And what we're looking at is pod. Pod disruption, pod. Actually, that's kind of funny. Because even here, that create, oh, see, that's why you read. Will this do this? Because I think it's run. Yeah, my bad. Create is for deployments. And we'll get there. Okay, so let's start that over again. We're going to do kubectl run. And in this case, it's run. You have the name of the thing that you're going to run, which is a pod. It always runs a pod. You tell it which image, and it pulls these images from whatever you currently have configured. So by default, it's going to be Docker Hub, but you can change that obviously by changing the name of the image. And then any arguments that it needs. The big ones are these overrides. And the most important one to remember is the dry run option. So let's do that. We're going to call this test1. We're just going to use Nginx. And we're going to say dry run. See, this is part of why I'm doing it, because I need all this stuff to stick in my head better too. Like, I do it. Not dry dash run. Equals client. And one of the things that I always do is I have the output be YAML. And this is one of the things that always, in general, bothers me. When it switches between this and this. I wonder if there is any explanation in here. Oh, yeah, I guess I could do output equals. Let's do it. So that's going to give you the actual YAML file that you would want to run this. So let's get rid of the dry run first and just run it. And you might be saying, well, where is it? There is a problem with this. What did we forget? We forgot to give it a namespace. So what does that mean? Where did it go? Well, it goes wherever my default is. And you can see your default with namespace. No, that's all the namespaces. There we go. Config current context. So it tells me I'm running as admin. And then we want to config command. Wait a minute. Why is set cluster? There we go. Namespace. But if we want to get context, there we go. So that says how we're running. We're running as this person, the admin, on this cluster, the dev cluster, or my cluster, where I'm pulling the credentials from, and what the default namespace is, which is default. So if we went over to default, we would see that. We would see, or we would have seen that pod running. Actually, let's do it. So let's chain all that together real quick. First thing, like, who am I? Group control, config, get context. There we go. That says who I am and what my default namespace is. So then I do group control run image equals nginx. Let's just say latest. Why not? And just like Docker, you say which version you're pulling from Docker Hub. Oops. We do need to name it. Test 1. All right. We can see that it's not here. If we go to default, bam, there's test 1. We can also do get pods, and we see there. If we do output equals wide or -o wide, it gives us a little bit more information. Which node it's on, what its IP is, all that fun stuff. Kubernetes control delete pod test 1. And gone. So now Kubernetes control. I know it's everybody else says Kubernetes cuddle. I'm doing Kubernetes control. Oh, hey. How's it going, Numplex? Sorry, my chat screen is over here and I completely missed it. But now I'm looking at it. Am I a pen tester? I am not a pen. Well, I have pen tested, but I am not a pen tester by trade. No. And I'm not doing bad. And hey, how are you doing? Took a week off and I'm just not used to doing the scanning over to the chat window. Sorry about that, truly. What was I doing? Oh yeah. I specialize in everything. I'm a jack of all trades. This is me just working in my home lab and kind of right now I'm just going over a lot of the basic commands for Kubernetes, just to kind of poke around and jog my brain. I've done cybersecurity. I held a CISSP. I have a Security Plus. I have a cybersecurity analyst certificate. So, am I capable of it? Sure. But I wouldn't say it's my specialization. What about yourself? Yeah, ask away. Anything I can do. Happy to help. All right, so well, honestly, it's kind of unrelated, and it's a weird thing to say that, but um, if you're looking to get into penetration testing, honestly, your best option is to do it, and that kind of comes down to number one, practicing with Hack the Box and those sort of exercises. Also looking at bounty programs and that sort of thing. But if you're looking to be a security architect, that's kind of a completely different side of that coin. And cloud security is just a specialization within that, as is network security. Not to say that you can't have all of those things and be good at all of those things, but they are like, oh, and thanks for the follow, but they are also very specific columns. I saw a really cool chart that specialized on like where all of that sits at. Let me take a look for it real quick. Is it CyberSeek? You know, I don't think this is it, but this looks like it kind of relates to it. So it kind of tells you what you want to be looking at. Like you have your specific roles and the sorts of things where you get into it and kind of what you can ask monetarily. It'll also give you an idea of, you know, what direction you're going in and where you want to go. Does that make sense? Well, security architecture is well, the title security architect is just kind of a high level. It's going to depend entirely on where you're applying for and what you're actually looking to architect around. Yeah, exactly. Any experience can get you towards cybersecurity architect, but it all just kind of comes down to like, okay, how do you get to each one of these? And this is definitely not the end all be all. This is just the first thing I found when looking at the charts, but it's kind of A to B path, right? Like this is 100%. This is where I started. I did some of this, and some of this. I did a little bit of this, much less of this, a whole lot more of that. Honestly, as you study for the CISSP, you're going to get an idea of that. I wouldn't say master of all. I said I did them. I didn't say I did them well. But really, if you look for some of the, there's a lot of free videos on YouTube just around studying for the CISSP. That's going to give you the best concept of not only like which path you should kind of go down, but it's gonna help you figure out what you enjoy. Like on the security architecture side of thing, doing code review and code analysis, I dislike that like nobody's business. So you're not gonna see me ever. You're never gonna see my name in a code review. You know what I mean? Yeah, absolutely. Either one. I mean, or both. I mean, it's what draws you. I will say that cloud security is a bit more esoteric. A lot of it comes down to UAM, user access management, and rights management. There's a much heavier focus in that space. And if you're the kind of person who loves staring at spreadsheets of access control and that sort of thing, cloud security is the way to go. If you're more interested in seeing, data flows and data pathing and how different things are used, then yeah, network could definitely get you there. I would honestly say look at not just the CISSP, but some of I think there's 2 or 3 certificates you can get that are previous to that. And the CompTIA Security Plus is a lot of times on sale, and it's a good like entry level primer to, here's what security really looks like. I can't say that I've ever gotten a job because I had a Security Plus, but I can definitely say that it helped me look at the entire universe of it. Yeah, CompTIA. And they definitely try to push their training. Skip their training. Don't do that. The YouTube videos and the Udemy courses and that sort of thing, way cheaper and honestly better. If I hate to keep going back to it, but find what you're interested in, and don't focus so hard on specializing. Well, I mean, depending on like if you're in the I need a job right now, okay, focus on specializing. But if you're trying to figure out what you want, figure out what you want. Do some of the more generic ones. Actually, CISSP is fairly generic. It's basically the Security Plus with a heavier focus on physical security. There's Security Plus really glazes over the physical security side of things. Cool. I mean, right? Cool is what you have fun doing. If you're not having fun, it's not cool. It doesn't matter what it is. That's why I say, really, even if you don't try to get these certificates, just look for some of the training around them, and just kind of say, hey, does this numb my mind, or does this make me go, huh, I want to try that, right? It just comes down to the industry. I mean, apps right now are still big business, right? Should IoT become big business, then that's going to be the next place that people are throwing money at. If it's cloud, then that's where they're going to throw money. It's all just a matter of what's blowing up right now. Absolutely. Happy to answer. So, like, let's search real quick for, no, Security Plus. There you go. I mean, a lot of these videos, they're like 10. Professor Messer's really good, actually. Watch a couple of those. It's going to go over the domains. It's going to give you an idea of what's out there. Each of those domains you can then further specialize in if you want to. Cryptography is always going to be necessary, 100%. And if you've got the brain for it, there's no reason ever not to. Let's see. What's this one? Go away. Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty decent chart. Come on. Doo, doo, doo. Let's see. That's weird that it's opening and it's... Oh, I know why it's doing that. Like, that is just oddball. That's because of me. I'm opening it in a weird place. Let me just copy it over. Yeah, there was one that used something like this that basically just created each of the columns for the domains instead. Let me see. I'm pretty sure there's a different one. Is this it? Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a chart, right? It's as helpful as you want it to be. So when you think of the term architect versus engineering, generally speaking is the one that's actually putting the commands in. which is kind of what I was doing as you walked in. Whereas architect is writing the documentation that says these are the guidelines that that installation should adhere to. Does that make sense? Architect, generally speaking, is a lot less hands-on. It's if you know anything about Ansible or that sort of thing, you're the one writing the scripts for somebody else to execute. Yeah, a lot. Well, a lot more whiteboard, a lot more project management, a lot more getting people at a table and having conversations. That's the architect side of thing. The engineering side of thing is doing everything in your power not to be in a meeting because it stops you from working. Well, no matter what, you have to deal with people. That's part of working, unfortunately. Yeah, architect is generally more on the project management side. You're herding cats a bit more. It's technical, but it's technical documentation. And to do that documentation, you're gathering requirements, you're gathering existing configurations, and putting it all together. That yeah, there's definitely a lot of people involved in your documentation. Granted, that's going to change, business to business, company to company, but for the most part, that's going to be true. I mean, it sounds like you want to focus on the engineering side, but at the end of the day, when you're working, it's a people thing. So the CISSP is just kind of it is a very broad security knowledge base. It basically says that you have some level of understanding in all of the domains. Uh, it's kind of up to you, the individual, to dig deeper from there and find which one of the further training you want to go into. So, I mean, from your side, wanting to build things, you're probably looking at engineering. But in any one of them, people's skills are going to take you a long way. Security, one of the worst things about security is that people are the weakest link. So you spend a lot of time teaching people. Yeah, it is what it is when it comes to security. I actually just had a conversation with someone about that very thing. Um, they were asking me what sort of policies they should implement in their uh, business around security, and kind of the same sort of conversation of, okay, how do we put this together and lay out what you need? And their biggest one was they needed a training program. That's really going to depend on the company, and it's also going to depend on you. For me, I would never be able to pull off a cryptography engineer. I'm terrible at math compared to what you really want for that. Um, and cloud architecture is honestly calling Microsoft or Google and saying, hey, what do I need to build this? And then documenting it. And lucrative's always going to be subjective. I mean, the only job that's ever going to pay you a lot guaranteed is CEO. Yeah, there's always going to be office politics as well, unfortunately. You put any people together and you make them spend 8 hours a day together for 5 days a week, it's gonna happen. And that's actually one of the more interesting, for me personally, it's one of the more interesting things when it comes to security, right? Is social engineering. Social engineering teaches you how to deal with people in a way that ends up being customer service friendly. Polishing that skill and that skill set is absolutely vital, not just from the general security knowledge perspective, but social engineering will take you places. Bounty hunting and pen testing. So freelance cryptography is kind of the only thing I could really think of myself for freelance cryptography would be just open source, and I don't know if that's lucrative. Whereas on the cloud side of things, it would there's probably a larger market right now for cloud to do freelance sort of stuff. I don't know the last time I heard somebody say, hey, we need to hire a cryptographer, but just for like a week. That might be a thing within security companies. Most that I worked with, they were kind of founded around one kind of genius cryptographer. I mean, if you think about all of the major companies that focus on security or cryptography, in the background they've got one person who that's just what they do. It's not that it's not important, it's that they're not going to develop it in-house. They're going to just be buying something from someone else. They're going to use something that meets DoD standards or ISO 27001 standards, and they're not going to worry about it. And generally speaking, that's a good thing. Unless you get into a situation like we had with CrowdStrike, where everybody's using it, so that means the one vulnerability it had took out half the world. But yeah, generally speaking, it's going to come from one of the companies. No, that's a completely different issue. That was, if I remember what I read correctly, that was basically just a vulnerability definitions file that didn't get checked properly. Well, in theory, a cryptographer may have been able to hash it. I don't know. I don't. It, it would have been it would have been really strange if a cryptographer stopped it. Yes, cryptography is absolutely. I mean, uh, go on Wikipedia and look up the Diffie-Hellman algorithm. That's kind of the beginnings of not perfect, but forward secrecy uh, encryption. It's one of those weird things that will blow your mind. It sounds like a magic trick because you can have a number and someone else can have a number, and you can figure out each other's numbers by telling a third person an unrelated number. I wouldn't say that it hasn't been explored. It's definitely in process. The biggest thing with cryptography that is, in my mind, and this is just a guess, but in my mind is going to blow up soon, is cryptography. Because in theory, a working quantum computer removes all of our cryptography. Like it's done. Yep. You were going the same direction. There are allegedly quantum safe algorithms, but they aren't, well, last I checked, they aren't in common use. Um, yeah, so NIST announced the first four just a couple of years ago. Whether or not they're currently in use, yeah. Crystals Kyber. Thank you for visiting NIST. Yeah. Oh man, and it's lattice encryption. Yeah, see, this is where my eyes roll back in my head, and I'm not interested anymore. Like it's cool, it's magical. I'll just let it be magic. But absolutely, quantum computing is going to realistically turn encryption on its head, and when true quantum supremacy is reached and we're able to just have a quantum computer running, modern encryption no longer matters. And that's one of the important things about that understand. One of the more important things to understand about security in general is it's not a matter of if, it's when. Everything needs to be built from the perspective of, okay, how do we recover from when we're breached? And cryptography is one of those things where, you encrypt a hard drive and you just stash that thing away. You pick it up in 10 years, it might as well not be encrypted anymore. You're like, sure, it is, but you can rainbow table your way through it right now. Any encryption that was available 10 years ago is basically broken already. Stop it. Why did I turn that back on? Sure, absolutely. And that's understandable. No problem at all. I do have subtitles on, if that would be helpful. You can easily turn those on. I'm broadcasting with subtitles if it's helpful. But encryption, any encryption that was in use 10 years ago is probably broken. So when you're thinking about security just in general, you have to think about no sorry needed. But anytime that you're doing security, you have to think about when, not if. When is a breach going to occur? When are you going to have to deal with a security incident? Because there is no if. It is going to happen. And everything needs to be built around the idea of detecting it and limiting its actual limiting the actual damage. One of the most important things in security, and one that an architect deals with immensely, is BCP, business continuity planning. Just writing the documentation for how are you going to recover from the inevitable incident, and how are you going to decide how bad it was. BCP actually is one of the things that is kind of a chill job. There's a lot of dealing with people directly because, like I said, you've got to gather requirements, you've got to understand what's important to who. But it's just about making sure that when a breach occurs, you've planned how to continue business continuity planning. That's it. And you really just go down all of the possible paths of what could be bad and how bad could it be. Depends on how many years, in my mind. I actually don't have a Discord. There's a reason that I haven't done Discord, and that's that there are so many streamers that have really good Discords already. I don't feel like I would be adding much. If anything, I would say look at Pirate Software's Discord, specifically under the security area. Best in the business, honestly. And the last thing, at some point, I would just be copying everything that they've built. Thanks for saying that. But in my opinion, I would rather add to theirs. It's the relevant XKCD. I mean, I don't think I need to add another standard, right? I'll jump on theirs. I'll help in any way there that I can. But yeah, this one right here, he's got a whole section dedicated to security and the paths, and of the 164,000 members, I think 30,000 of them are in that particular area and have some bang up advice. Yeah. Oop. I need to disable that. But yeah, definitely. I mean, his streams are kind of more hanging out and chatting. He doesn't do a lot of the security stuff like he used to, but I mean, generally a cool guy, but so I think AI security is kind of an interesting space. So here's the thing with AI security, it's more of security AIs, if that makes sense. And it's the sort of thing that's been kind of going on for at least 10 years now. The idea of taking your baseline data and applying a machine learning algorithm against it so that the machine can react on its own. And it's called SOAR. What is it? Okay, get back here. Yeah. Security orchestration, automation, and response. And that exists. It's a thing. It's really about having AI take care of as much of the security as possible. And generally, SOAR kicks out to a seam, and that's where the humans get involved. I mean, the orchestration, automation, and response, it's got, obviously, here's the AI bit, right? Here's it getting kicked out to the information and event management. And this is basically Ansible, but with a security focus. Ansible or Terraform. And that's just all of those getting jammed into this. Pretty much you can look at anything security related and you will find, or you can look at anything technology related and you will find that there is an acronym that a security person has made that includes it. And generally that acronym involves some sort of product that they're trying to sell you. And if you notice, you can pretty easily find products in the AI realm, right? But when you look at the cryptography side of things, quantum safe, you're going to Wikipedia, you're going to NIST, you're going to government agencies, well, and IBM, because IBM is in everything. Whereas SOAR, you've got Palo Alto Networks, you've got specific companies offering solutions. On this side of things, it's governments and schools, right? So that kind of tells you encryption is the realm of governments and schools. It's something that's provided. It's something that's given and tested by other people, smart people who are really, really good at math. But it's generally not their focus. It's, that's just one of the things that they've done. Whereas SOAR, security automation, that sort of stuff, those are specific problems or specific products that are being sold. Exactly. I mean, lattice encryption is just, actually, each of the base level encryptions are just really interesting to look at how they work. And that's another big difference between the Security Plus and the CISSP. CISSP goes into how do each one of these encryptions work? What is blockchaining encryption? What is sorry, it's been a while, and like I said, encryption makes my head roll back into my Yeah, it doesn't do great things to my brain. Whereas the Security Plus, it kind of mentions AES. So my last role was fun. I was a lab manager for a technology lab for an innovation team. I played with robots. I played with 3D printers, uh, drones. I built servers. I assisted people in just testing products. It was a lot of fun. One of those jobs that kind of doesn't exist anymore. My hierarchy. Technically, I was management, but I spent 15 years doing my best not to be a manager, and then had to be a manager because it was the only way that a lab was going to get built and the only way work was going to get done. It was in the six figures. The hardest part about that one was just it was a labor of love more than anything. And sometimes you get into that. If you, I mean, me, I like watching lights blink. And I know you're probably getting tired of hearing that, but it depends. It's challenging. Challenging is deeply personal. Whatever is challenging to you may not be challenging to me. What might be lucrative is just a matter of what you want to put your work into, put yourself into. Um, I would say that in general, the market is going towards niche experience being more valid. But the hard part is that it's a bet. It's a bet on yourself, and it's a bet that that particular technology is going to remain important for the long term, right? Um, Not a lot of technologies do. Uh, if you were a web developer, you know, in the 2000s, you're making a lot of money until you weren't. If you're an app developer, uh, same sort of deal. So you're taking a chance. The one thing about technology that is really weird in that particular regard is that it's the only job where you have to continually learn at a pace that is just ridiculous compared to any other role. Like you, no matter what, when you're working, you have to be learning. The amount of additional learning that you have to do to stay relevant in technology over time is pretty big. And if suddenly you find yourself in that position where you're like, oh well, you know, I've learned enough and I'm really comfortable in my role, it's time to start getting nervous. Actually, one of the things that I was screwing around in here, very security related. I don't know if you've done any personal Homelab stuff. But this app right here, if you do, is great. And it's free. Oh yeah, but I'm still... Did I get it right? No. Yeah, there we go. Hey, anytime. If I can help a person, I mean, if anything, just knowing that I helped makes me feel good. Win-win, right? It's like on my YouTube channel, I actually did. I walked through this particular thing, but essentially, it utilizes a pre-configured kind of scan for a machine, and it will give you its security baseline essentially, and you can go through and you literally get a checklist of security problems, and then it tells you how to go in and fix them and become compliant, and it tells you different ways to attack it if you want to, that you can go look this up. It's going to tell you exactly what that means and how to do it. So a Homelab is, well, that's what I'm using here. This is a, not that, this is a cluster of machines that's sitting to my left, and basically I use it to practice breaking things. It's a quick way to spin up servers. Like I mentioned, the hack the box challenges, you can deploy those into this and screw around with them. But a Homelab is basically just a computer or a set of computers that you've segregated off from the rest of your network, and you use it as a safe place to try things from a technology perspective. Yeah, the capture the flag challenges and all those sorts of things. You can really just download those VMs and go at it. It's fun. I've done a number of them. I've been spending a lot more time focusing on cluster building and software evaluations and that sort of thing, but at some point I definitely want to get back to screwing around with some capture the flag stuff. Sure, ask away. What's funny though is there is on Hack the Box, one of the most popular boxes is named Mr. Robot, and if I remember right, it's actually designed after a Mr. Robot season, maybe. Now I'm curious. I did play through it. It was interesting, but all right, here we go. And there's the walkthrough for it if you really wanted to screw around with it. It tells you all of the stuff that you might want to do to get through it. Although it's medium, so yeah. based on the Mr. Robot show. Can you root this box? That one was fun. Possibly. Are you tired of hearing it depends yet? So there's a couple of things you can look at, and this is just random. I've never heard of Station X. But Callie and Parrot, I mean, you're going to get pros and cons with Callie and Parrot. I've never heard of Commando. Backbox I've heard of. But basically these are things where the operating system already has a lot of the tools in place that you would be using to do that. Most of the hacking tools are open source, or in a lot of cases, all you're doing is slightly modifying existing code. So when you see those things where, you know, oh, they're programming up an application to do this thing. Yeah, it happens sometimes. It definitely does. But the reason it's mostly social engineering and phishing is because what's the weakest link in any security? People. Like, you can spend the effort to write a program, but the number of people that are going to find actual software issues that they can attack, that is a much smaller group of people. And those people, generally speaking, are not the ones that are on TV. And honestly, the stuff that's on TV it's always going to be, you know, a little bit more dramatic flair. It's hard to put doom and gloom sounding music over somebody calling someone and saying, hey, I forgot my password. And yes, that is all it takes, a ridiculous number of times. I mean, that scene in the movie Hackers where he says, "Oh yeah, can you read me the phone number off the modem?" That absolutely, it's so true. I mean, brute force is pretty much always an option. It's just, again, at that point, you're falling back to the basic premise of security being it's not if, it's when. It's universally true. It's not if, it's when. If a person allows, well, even if the person doesn't allow brute forcing to happen, you can run a brute force attempt, and okay, it might take 10,000 years. That's still when, not if. So brute force has a very specific meaning. Brute force just means attempting repeatedly without any concern for whether or not you're going to get caught, logged, or noticed. Just hammering it with everything that you got. So especially in the security world, brute force has a very specific meaning. It's like the idea of running a password cracker and starting from 1 and going to, 10 million and just trying everything. Okay, so that's actually called a blind pen test, if I remember right. It's either blind or double blind. Is it blind? Here we go. Types of pen testing. I think it was blind. External, internal, no. That's not what I want. That's again somebody trying to sell. Yeah. So, what? Enter your password. No. Okay, so yeah, a blind test is a lot harder when you're looking at something like a phone. If the phone has, say, a username and password. Obviously, like a phone, brute force is always an option, and that's the reason for things like it timing out. It makes it so that that time is longer. It makes that win hit a point where technically it's out of reach. But it all comes down to what information you do have, right? So like, let's just say you're saying Instagram. So if you wanted, well, it probably won't work on Google. Let's go. Let's say Instagram known password vaults. So there's one right there. That's promising. It's a couple of years old, right? And this is basically somebody just going to the app and doing a pen test against the app to find this thing. So was it possible at this point in time? Sure. No thanks, go away. So this is where your brute force came in. They rate limited it to 250 per IP address. He figured that out, and just kind of going through the steps and figuring out what you need to do to hit that next minimum requirement. Now with something like Instagram, to go through that process, they're probably going to find you, tag you, maybe send someone to your door, right? But if you look to see if they have a bounty program and you find a server that they deem is okay to hit, then guess what? You can have a blast with that because they've said it's okay. The downside of that is that, well, there's a flip side of that. If too many people start abusing that, then guess what? Bounty programs start drying up. But on the other hand, if you find something, you could get paid, right? So I need to get rid of that stupid thing. I really do. Yeah, exactly. FBI, CIA, somebody comes and says hi. Well, not just the bounty hunters, unfortunately. And that's what I was saying. Like, if you want to actually attack something, then use something that's considered acceptable in the bounty program to find the flaw, because what are they going to do? Call the FBI on you for trying to help them? And then once you find it, go use it for real. I mean, if you just don't tell them about it, right? I would never advocate for that. I'm just saying, like, there's there's an issue there. There's a potential problem. So I try to be on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday after 2 p.m. Pacific. Fridays, though, I'm generally just screwing around playing games. Oh, that reminds me, I need to hide my note. Yeah, good. Man, all of this, I was making a pod. 2 a.m., 12 hours away from me. I mean, you did say English isn't your first language. 12 a.m. Philippines? India. I was off by a couple hours. One of my favorite bosses was from India. He was a great guy. Crazy as hell, but a great guy. Oh, I should have asked, if anything, right? Out of water. Time to go to plan B. Run. No. Okay. Going back to test one. So what I was doing really was just slamming away on the cluster just to see what, just to jog my memory. Like I said, actually, some of the Kubernetes security stuff is really fun. I'm sure it's dependent on the, well, it's dependent on the person, right? Like, it's one of the things that it's slow to learn, and I think even a lot of Americans haven't figured it out yet. But people are people. Where they're from may change some of their perspectives, and it may change what they want out of life. But at the end of the day, if a person's a jerk, it's because they're a jerk. Well, yeah, I mean, statistically, all of us are pretty fat too, but I'm only kind of fat. Oops. Stupid flags. I like to think I was fun as a boss. I mean, like I said, we all spend 8 hours there. There's absolutely no reason not to have a good time. I spent 6 years doing customer service, 4 of those years as an escalation point, so I can understand the human condition of just wanting to be, let's just take care of it. Let's just get it done. There's a lot of people that never had to deal with that, and I think for me that was the biggest eye opener. Realizing everybody just wants to get from A to B. Do what you can to help, right? Yeah. Well, it's funny. The company that I ended up running the innovation lab for, I started in customer service. I had done a summer job where I was answering questions for the Forestry Service about hiking trails. And the requirement was basically just answer as many questions and phone calls as possible. When I went to get a job because I'd grown up, I ended up at a temp agency and told them, I've done customer service. I never want to do it again. They heard customer service experience. Bam, got me a job the next day. But as it turned out, I learned a lot, had a good time, and I mean, it sucked. It sucked at first, but it was a paycheck, and ended up meeting a lot of really cool people out of it. You know, friends that are still friends, and it was a good time. So realistically, my previous role was in banking, and being in banking, there is a constant hammer of everybody is responsible for security. And it should be true in all industries. Hey, Tomato, how's it going? I was just giving Numplex a little bit of background in my cybersecurity ute. Not bad, yourself? Am I saying that right, by the way? Numplex? But anyway, the point was everybody is responsible for cybersecurity, and that's the important thing that every company needs to realize and needs to have in place, is a training program that says everybody is responsible, because people are the weakest link. Num it is. Total a little over 20 years. That's right, you did ask how long. I mean, you know, the first 5, 6 years, my security influence was making sure I didn't share PII. You know, like, there's a vast difference in the stages as you move forward. And, you know, that's something to consider as well on the entry level side of computer security in general. There is a big push for everybody to have that entry level knowledge. So if everybody has it, it kind of stops being a job in and of itself. That makes sense? Cybersecurity, I've always found it interesting. I just always have. It's I when I first got my hands on a machine, I did two things. I broke it and spent 3 months fixing it, which was probably the greatest use of my time ever. And then immediately figured out how to get the internet for free, which was probably not the best use of my time. Yes. Well, free. Um, Someone paid for it, I'm sure. Actually, for a couple of years, got really into phone freaking, which was entertaining. Doing just the stupidest things like bouncing a call all the way around the world and standing at two payphones talking back and forth. Never made it to the military. I considered it. I really should make my chatbot read questions. I need that text to speech working. But I refuse to let somebody else do it. Oh yeah, dry run is client. I've already figured out that that's empty. Boom, boom, boom. One second. And we're back. What are 3 things that have been learned in 20 years of cybersecurity that for advice? Well, I mean, I've kind of given you a lot of it. Number 1, humans are the weakest link. Number 2, in general, people are lazy. And again, that's humans are the weakest link. But what you'll find is that not just people are lazy, but hackers are lazy. And that's generally how they get caught. And wear sunscreen. No. A good firewall. Learn how firewalls work and why they work. Firewalls are going to be, at the end of the day, they're your beginning and end as far as prevention, and that's for your own home internet. Although today a good firewall working in tandem with a good VPN is probably the best thing you can do for your personal security. And a lot of people are going to say that a VPN is not a security feature, And they're right if you're buying a VPN that somebody else controls. If you run your own VPN, it is absolutely a security feature, and it's the best thing you can do for yourself. Welcome to the wild world of Homelabbing. I didn't create my own VPN, but I installed it. No, you're really, and it actually covers a good number of the pillars of security in general. You have to deal with cryptography. You have to deal with generating certificates. You have to deal with firewall and access control. You have to deal with the installations. And then you have to deal with access management a lot. But just going and finding a WireGuard setup that you can use and using it it's really great, honestly. And it's one of those things where if you're using a VPN that just goes to some other server in the cloud, all you're doing is handing off access to your data from your ISP or whoever controls your towers to that company. Great, okay, new bottleneck, new problem. If you're running your own VPN, then everything from your device gets encrypted back to your internet connection, and it seems like you're just at home. It's the taking responsibility for your own security. And it's a funny thing that happens when you really get into security. You start really looking at data pipelines and honestly just your own self-sufficiency, what you can do on your own to make sure that you are protected from whatever it might be, right? You start finding yourself when you're trying to pay for something with a credit card, you pull on that credit card reader just a little bit to see if there's a skimmer in there. You just do stupid things because you're thinking from a perspective of how do I protect myself? Exactly. I mean, for the cost of electricity, or in the case of depending on your ISP, if your ISP doesn't allow for outgoing connections, you may need to utilize some sort of application that will make that happen. But it's part of that mindset, part of that security mindset, you know? And again, just going through some of the training for these certificates, even if you don't intend on getting them, it helps you get that mindset. It helps you think, how do I be secure? What am I doing to make sure about this? Like, I use Google for a lot of my stuff, not because I think Google is particularly secure. I know exactly what they're doing. I know that they're collecting my data, and I know that they're selling it. And I'm making that conscious decision of, I am okay with that for now, because I don't want to build something myself. But at least it's an informed decision to be stupid. Yeah, exactly. It's not it's not the type of data that they're collecting. I'm not super concerned about. But on the other hand, and this is kind of a funny like side note to that, there are companies that are collecting your data, and that data can be used by authorities. That data can be used by uh, anybody to validate like what you were doing, what you were looking into. You see it on the news all the time. They checked their search history, etc., etc. If you don't have any trail, then in that instance, there's more to look for. There's more questions. There's a deeper dig that tends to happen. Whereas if you have a normal trail, it's much easier to just slide in stupid little things or create holes in that data and nobody looks at it twice. I mean, in theory, hypothetically. One of the one of the funniest things a friend of mine was doing is they would actually create multiple accounts that matched their name and just sprinkle them everywhere, all kinds of places. They just sign them up for stuff, sign them up on Instagram, put them on Facebook, post just random stupid things that meant nothing. It's creating such a big noise profile that it's harder to cut through. And that's that cat and mouse game. AI is going to be used to start cutting out that noise. So AI is going to start being used to create more of that noise. And we're just going to fill up the internet with garbage. I mean, more garbage. And it goes back to that when, not if, right? If you backfill your internet history with garbage, then when it's important, it's already full of garbage. Although now that I've started streaming and actually like trying to put my face out there, a little bit harder now. Exactly. I'm willing to give up a little bit of the anonymity just to make my life a little easier. As long as I know that I could, in theory, shut it off, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Right? I mean, I guarantee I'm going to be getting ads for pen testers and ISO 2701 audit services for the next 2 weeks just because of the searches I've done in this chat. Oop, I hid myself again. Wrong window. Pow, I'm back. Yeah, exactly. No thanks. And that's also, I mean, you saw me switch back and forth, right? Like, there's times that I use Google, and there's times that I don't use Google. Spread that data around. Things like looking for a Wi-Fi jammer. It's surprising how cheap those are. Yeah. See, but like this VPN just gives your data to them. So you wouldn't want this VPN. You'd look at OpenVPN, which in theory you can probably just run a Docker node. No, OpenVPN's free. Although, let's see here. Access server. You may need to do, yeah, community download. So you just have this running on your machine, and then you probably also need what is it called? Dynamic DNS. I use no IP because it's one IP for free. And then this actually comes with the app that you install on your phone, and then, hey, there you go. So, sort of. I still do consulting for cybersecurity. Like I said, I was talking to a company just the other day. But for the most part, once I got laid off, I'm a consultant. Yep. Well, I mean, the fun part is I worked in innovation. I worked in innovation during a time period when, so I went into innovation when doing innovation work was a tax write-off, and then got laid off when innovation stopped being a tax write-off. The tech world right now is an interesting beast, especially where I'm at in the Bay Area. Innovation isn't technically a cybersecurity domain. It's basically R&D for a bank. And I did, well, since I owned soup to nuts, a lab environment, I handled all of the security planning, security engineering, security architecting, basically from the beginning did it all, and then slowly started handing that off to people as I was able to hire them on. But then that team went away. So the moment most of the teams that I supported dropped off, there wasn't really much of a reason to have the lab around anymore. Yeah, basically it was an internal startup. That's how we specifically ran it. Sorry, yes. Bay Area in the US. Silicon Valley is San Francisco Bay Area, yes. Correct. Seattle. Seattle's more. It does have a term. I don't think it's Silicon Valley. It's technically it's Redmond, uh, rather than Seattle, and that's Microsoft and Amazon. I think actually Facebook slash Meta has all of their VR development up there as well. Well, not all, but a good portion of it. One of my uh, one of my AI engineers went over there. He was far more interested in games than the math behind AI. So anytime we had anything that was even vaguely related to games, I would put him on that project, even though technically that's not what I hired him for. I wanted to make sure that he got that experience so that he could know for certain if that's where he wanted to go. It sucked losing him, but rather people be happy. I mean, as a manager, that is your job. Your job is to push people in the direction that is going to make them happy. Where was I? Oh, yeah. And that's basically. I would say I would say if you are if you're happy, you've never wasted your time. You know, the only time that's ever wasted is time spent being unhappy doing what you're doing. There's of course going to be times when you have to knuckle down and do something that you don't want to do, but it's it should still have either an outcome or a result that allows you to continue doing the thing that you want to do. Like if you need to have if you need to go through particular training that you don't want to do, but it gets you to that next step, okay, you know, yeah, you're going to spend a little time unhappy, but at the end of it, you're still working towards being happy, right? So, I mean, I I had one guy, he didn't even want to be in tech, so it, he ended up just buying a bar and getting out of it completely. And you know what? Super happy for him. Definitely miss him. Definitely miss the intelligence that he brought to the team, but he's happy. So I'm happy. Oh yeah, it'll get mundane. And there will be pressure. Well, I think you already know what I'm going to say. It depends, right? Uh, there are places where being a cloud architect, you are going to have pressure, and if you enjoy that pressure, then awesome. But if you're at a job where that pressure is 24/7 and they're not going to allow anything to change that will take that pressure off, and you don't enjoy that pressure, then guess what? You're not happy. Get out. Go do it somewhere else. Uh, and there are those times where it'll get mundane, but if it hits that point where you feel like, okay, this is just boring, then A, be worried, but B, go find something that's not. Work towards happiness. I mean, you're the only one that can do it for yourself. Unless you have a good manager that's also going to work with you, work with you and for you to make it happen, right? And that was the thing. Uh, I've done training for technology. I've never done training for anything managerial, but I took all of the previous people that I had ever worked under, and they they taught me what was bad and what was good. Oh, I've done it. I've done the architecture side of things. I created all of the plans and documentation and software stacks in that lab environment. Um, I've definitely gone through the application and interview process a number of times. It's it's just hasn't happened. And it's the kind of job that I would be happy in. If it happens, it happens. I'll keep working towards it. Consultancy is what I'm doing in the interim. Like I said, uh, the California, San Francisco Bay Area is an interesting place right now for technology. There's a whole lot of roles open that aren't actually open. They're just collecting resumes for a time when it is open. But yeah, just exploring. Just seeing what else is out there, what else I can do. And enjoying it while I can. And honestly, spending a lot more time in my home environment, which is something I'd neglected for quite a while. Thanks a lot. I hope so too. It's always kind of interesting though when I have a stream like this. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely game dev. I've gone. Well, let me show you So I've got a little bit of a background, obviously, in project and program management as well, to go with everything else. And oops. And one of the things that I use, this is in the lab that I've got installed. This is basically a project management server. Kind of, right? So I wouldn't say that I have a whole lot of experience in game dev. Most of my experience was making silly or running the projects for other people to actually make silly sort of demo sort of things. But basically, like, I've got different concepts and I will just create the GDDs and then at some point run back through it. You know, and reread it. I mean, one of the best things you can do with game development is just make a game development document. Lay out everything in your mind that this game that popped into your head that you think is a great idea. Put it on paper so you can come back to it and reread it in like a week. So the software that I use is called Redmine. I honestly wouldn't recommend it. It's not my favorite. It looks like it's from the 90s. Oops. But for like a game development document, I really used this, and this is hilarious. This is what I used as my template. This is actually the game development document for Grand Theft Auto. The very first Grand Theft Auto. It shows everything that they expected to get out of that game. And it's got its updates, and it lays out, this is how you prepare to make a game. And it will blow your mind putting all of this stuff together. And like I said, get it down, get it on paper, get it in a document, and then come back to it a week later and read it. If it still sounds like a good idea, then go for it. Oh, it's absolutely relevant. This is how it's still done today. This is the brainstorming stage of making a game. You define what you want it to be. If you don't have this definition, you don't have the concept of what is out of bounds. So you sit down and you start trying to make that game, and you get stuck because you want to make everything. You want to put everything in it. With this, you have something you can go back to and say, this is what I want. Honestly, it is a very specific game development thing, but any sort of architecture, this is what you do. No, indie game devs don't do well at all. One in every 10 million, maybe. It's not that high, but maybe 1 in 10,000 is making enough to get by. But if it's a hobby, if it's something that you enjoy and you throw it together and you pay I think it's think it's $100 for a Steam or a Google license to deploy to their stores, and then you just leave it out there. You can do a little bit of promotion and stuff like that if you want to, but as long as you know it's there, right? I wouldn't say freelance game dev is a terrible idea. If you can do it, if you're good at it, if you enjoy it, you can go on, some of those sites that do gig work, and you can say, hey, I'll do your, I don't know, the driving portion of your game, or I'll do the inventory management portion of your game. I'll do a section of your game, and here's what I'm going to charge for it, right? I mean, I'm terrible at doing pixel art still. I can edit an existing one, but I will go out and find an open source one, or if I were going to be actually professionally releasing a game, I would pay for someone to make the sprite sheets. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're not going to be making a AAA game because you're not a development house with 60, 70 people per team and millions of dollars of advertising budget. It's just not going to happen. But labor of love, look at Dwarf Fortress. I mean, that game has been being developed for, 25 years now? 7 Days to Die, one of my favorite games to play, honestly. Just got actually released like last month, and it's, I think, 10 years old. Dwarf Fortress. No, Banana. I can't believe Banana. Yeah, Dwarf Fortress. I mean, this is what it came from. It really came from an ASCII game. And it was released last year. Let's see. Yeah, it was originally released in 2006. So not 25 years, 18 years. That's still, it's ridiculous. And I think for the first 10 years, it was free. But, they just kept working on it. There's Zero AD. This game blows my mind. It's still a free game. There we go. Is this the one? Yeah, I mean, this is a game that's still under active development, and it's free. And they have no plans to ever charge for it. Just blows my mind. There's some people that just, this is what they want to do. Did this one? Yeah. Free. Free game. And I don't think they actually have this. I don't think this company, well, company has any games that are, let's see. No, that's not what I want. I think they have like 2 or 3 other games that they've released. But it's, if that's what you want to do, that's the deal. But then, you have games like what's the Undertale. I mean, Undertale is wildly successful, but the actual programming work that went into it and things like that, kind of ridiculous. Oh yeah, uh, Naughty Dog and Uncharted. They have. There was another game from Naughty Dog. There was a game I was very recently playing. Oh, yeah. Jack and Daxter. I forgot how much I played these games. It's so Dwarf Fortress is one of those games that uh, I would definitely check out its history before buying it because it is an intense simulation game. There are people that have been driven mad by that game. It is get your spreadsheets out. Like, it can be a job in and of itself if you want. It's like playing Eve Online that way. Yeah, if that's your thing, this one is, it's a beast. It's from what I understand, it's a little bit more in depth than Factorio, which is I've only ever beaten Factorio once. I didn't have the brain space to go and jump into it again. Oh no, really? Factorio is basically a game about software design. I mean, it's not actually software design, but it's basically software design. I can't say that I like retro games. I don't dislike them. Um, I I've found lately that I've been into survival style games, but I used to really love SimCity. Um, Cities Skylines is a lot of fun. I like sandbox games, I think. I'm not too worried about the art style. Which, honestly, for me, 9 times out of 10, the Homelab is my sandbox game. Yeah, it was awesome talking to you. Sometimes when you have a stream where you have a plan and you just end up having a great conversation, it's the best stream. Have a good night. No, not even a little bit. Like I said, sometimes they're the best. It's not work, it's practice. So real quick, grab another drink. Yoink. And yoink. All right. So meanwhile, back at the ranch, let's talk Kubernetes. Or K8s. So, what I had done, Kube control, run, test one, and we were using image, Nginx, latest, and what I was trying to point out was our default. So actually, let's go back. Let's get our context. So right now I'm running as admin. I probably shouldn't be, but I am. Deal with it. And we are in the default namespaces. If I set context, we're going to say namespace equals dev services. Oops. We do have to say which one we're changing, don't we? Mildly important. All right, and then we check our context. And now we're in the dev services namespace by default. Easy peasy. Man, I must have totally lost tomato in the conversation. All right, so yeah, we've got our context. Now, if I wanted to run our pod name test one, we're going to say latest. Bam. Now we go over to pods. We're in default. It didn't start because we're not in default anymore. We go to dev services. There's our pod. And that allows me to also delete it pretty easily. and it's gone. All right. Now, what if I wanted to run it in? What if I didn't want to change all of my commands so that they work there? So let's go back to our context, set context. We're going to go back to default. Now we're back to default. What we want to do here, when we're running, we can just prefix this. So -n or -- namespace equals dev services. Hiya. And we're still in dev services. Get back here, you. Cool, cool. But if I do all of a sudden that pod doesn't exist because I have to do everything now with that. And those are the two different ways of doing it. So -n or -- Kosher? Kosher. All right, 1 second. Ah, back at it. All right. So what does that do? That allows us to create a pod, obviously. Cool. Great. Okay. So what if we want to make some changes to this first? Well, that's where I was doing the other part of it, creating these files. So how we want to do dry run, and I keep doing true, but its client is the proper way of doing it now. And then I want the output to be YAML. You can also have it output JSON, but YAML it is. And that's going to give you just basic text, right? Now in this case, because I specifically put the namespace or left the namespace in there, I'm going to put the namespace as dev services. If I don't do that, it won't put a namespace, but that's going to mean, obviously, it's just going to go in whatever namespace it thinks makes sense. No, it's going to go into the namespace that you have set as your current default under the config. So let's set context, and we want namespace. Actually, let's do it the other way. -n dev services. I think it'll work this way. About to find out. You and me together. And we need it to say for current, because we can also say which namespace, so we could change the context of this namespace instead of the one that we're on. Oop, doesn't like it. Namespace equals. Oop, we're gonna need a second dash. And we get the context. We're back in dev services. All right. Now, in this instance, if we go back here, and again, we're just outputting the YAML, still doesn't put the namespace. So it's still just going to go to whatever's set as default. In this case, it's no longer the default namespace, it's dev services. And that becomes useful when you send it to a file. Because now you can go and edit this, and you can run, say you need this test pod to be set up in multiple namespaces. Well, now you can just you can apply the file instead of doing run. Although, you know what, let me check something. Because apply applies the file but doesn't update the replication controller if it's a new pod, if I remember right. Oh wait, it doesn't matter because it's just a pod, it's not a deployment. Never mind, take it back. But if I do this, now it automatically creates the pod, or not automatically, but we can just do that over and over and over again, right? But we can also just put this stuff in ourselves. This also allows us to put in other stuff, like resources gets left blank. We can fill that all in, so on and so forth. DNS policy, restart policy. Obviously, you want to do this just to kind of start your creations, as it were, and then go in and edit them, because after a while this starts getting fairly long, right? But each one of those fields it is technically addressable. We go back here, you start getting into like the environmental variables. honestly, when you're doing something with a Docker container, for instance. So I was looking at the official Docker image. So when you run it, you've got the ports and like this capability add, things like that. To kind of translate that from a Docker run, it would be dev services. We're going to call you, instead of doing a -- name, it's just going to be, oops, it's still run. But we don't need a -- name. We just pick a name. The cap add net admin. From what I can tell, it needs to be added at the pod level, but you don't want to give you don't want to give this container that access. So you end up having to run what's called a sidecar. We'll get there. But basically it's just another container that all it does is start up, does a thing, and then shuts down. We're not going to do that here, but I don't think there's enough time to go into it. But what we're going to do is make sure that we have the other parts to it. So ports. If we go back here, -- port. And just like it has it there, 943, 943. And what that's saying is that the container is going to expose this, so make that available on the namespace side. And then one more. .443, 443. And this one is saying specifically UDP. I don't remember how to make it just UDP. I know how to do it in the file, but I'm not sure how to do it out here. Actually, it's probably in here. Let's not cop out, huh? I mean, I could do it with the overrides. That's easy enough, right? I guess I don't need the quotes. Annotations, attach, command, dry run. We're going to be doing a dry run. Name of the manager to track? No. No, there's a lot more than YAML and JSON. Overrides. Now I'm curious, actually. I don't want to port forward. What's the file? I think this is going to be roughly the same thing. It's quite a bit longer. Storage driver host. Database. Wait, what is this? Interesting. So I'm wondering is how do we get multiples in there? I mean, I could just do an override to say TCP, but you know what? I'm gonna edit. Let's try this. So port 443, 943, 1194. Let's try it this way. I mean, it'd be kind of funny if it works, right? We don't have a volume. I don't think volume is an option in create or in run. Where were you on that one? We don't want create. We want run. Is there anything extra in here? As, nope. Profile, blah, blah, blah. I know, reading. Nobody likes reading. All right. Nope. We'll just do the same thing there. When I say the same thing, I mean, we're just going to fix it in post. All right. So we've got the ports and we've got the name. Oh, we're missing image. And in this case, it's going to be OpenVPN. And in this case, it's the access server, but I don't think that's, well, not, I don't think that's not what we're going to be using. We're going to output to YAML and drive run is client. Yep, I didn't think it would like that. See, and then it fills all these in. Although it seems to have skipped all of these. Does it only let you do the port once? Is it a comma separated? I thought you could just do the ports. What the hell? Only let you do one port, huh? No, that's not true. It's definitely not true. It's definitely not true. If you need to expose those from multiple containers, so you just have, they just want you to do an expose after the fact. All right, well, actually, this is fine. We can just do it afterwards, all right? And we'll say openvpn.yaml. And there we are. And realistically, we can do like the same thing. So it's got the ports. Here it says port container port. We just switch this to say port. No, wait, that's not right. We just add another one. But it should have... Let's grab the other one. Now we're just validating that we've got them all. 443. TCP. And 114. And in this case, UDP. Ooh, I think those do have to be capitalized. We'll see. Yep. TCP. TCP. UDP. And there we are. Hop back over here. And it's going to say it's pending because it's pulling the image. And I'm actually kind of curious about that image. Actually, I just want everything by OpenVPN. It's kind of ridiculous how many other companies also do them. And it's like the actual company does it. Now let's compare this to this is a lot of how-tos, but that's not what I'm worried about. Pretty sure I know how to. Hey, Rotus, how's it going? It has been quite a while. Well, I'm kind of just going through some Kubernetes basics. Just jogging the old brain pan. What about you? Yeah, that'll do it. Where are you based out of again? It has been a while. Germany, that's right, that's right. In my brain, I kind of have the length of names tied to locations still, and I was like, it's either Germany or Poland. I'm pretty sure it's Germany, but I didn't want to say one and be wrong. But then quite like the 2 a.m. brain zoomies. So let's look at what got built here. It definitely didn't create a log. I'm sure it doesn't have the access that it's supposed to have. Daemon reset. Could not fetch rule set. Permission denied. Haha. Creates its own cert. So you do anything fun today or over the previous couple of days, or honestly, anything new since the last time you were around? It has been a while. Touches Docker init. Oh, that's kind of funny. I didn't realize OpenVPN's front end was Node.js. Huh. I bet its failure point is that it doesn't have anywhere to store data. Oh, well, and not being able to run firewall commands. Oh, nice. How's London? Last time I went to London, it was interesting. I'll just say it's not one of my favorite places in the world, but there is nothing quite like the experience of sitting in a pub. And it doesn't matter which one. They're all just kind of uniquely better than bars here in the US. Oh, that's badass. Actually, early on in my time on the internet on IRC, I had a friend that got married in Las Vegas, drove over there to meet them for the first time during their wedding. That's cool. So I'm guessing everything went off without a hitch. They're still married. Nice. You know, I'm learning to be a better tourist. Uh, but at that point in time, I was there when I was in London. I was there not for myself. I was there for a friend that was supposed to be graduating from a college that was actually in Wales, and he just wanted to hang out for a little bit first. He had a particular focus, and we just kind of did what he wanted to do. And so I'm sure I have a skewed perspective on London. It was basically all karaoke bars. Karaoke bars and casinos. That's what we did the entire time we were in London. And I'm like, they're not really known for either one of these things. Why are we doing this? You know what I should do? No, I need to not do that. So I know that I need to give it specific security capabilities. And there was one that I was looking at. VPON. That's cool. Yeah, it's interesting. Just like you've known someone online for so long, and when you actually meet them, and the first maybe 10 minutes, 20 minutes for me was like meeting a new person. Like I've never met this person before in my life, and then suddenly the in jokes start falling in, and you hear the inflections and things that you expect, and it's just like boom, everything collides. At least that's how it was for me. The couple of times that I went through the process, everything's just weird and a little bit awkward to start off with, and then you're like, I know you. Or it's even funnier when you think about just the idea that it feels weird for you, but they're going through the exact same thing. Oh yeah, so this guy was, I need to go to his GitHub because he had better information there. Where'd you go? This guy is much farther along in his Homelab adventure than I am. But it's funny because I can see all of the things that I'm doing going into his. There it is. Like, he's got almost the exact same setup. I don't doubt that he probably went through a dev and prod instance as well. And a Terraform setup and an Ansible setup. A Pixie boot is well on my list. But what I'm looking for is his OpenVPN setup. So he pulls this capability, makes it privileged, but then dumps it so that this isn't privileged. The 1194 is a liveness probe. I promise, I'm not terraforming, I promise. Not yet. Don't be scared, you can come back. It's safe here. Oh, that's funny. Why are you still challenging? You're not running. Interesting. It's still refreshing the certificates even though it's not running. Oof. At months. Yeah, there is a sick part of me that is kind of interested in what's hiding behind that folder. But I'm not there yet, realistically. I'm still up here in the A's. And realistically, I'm more like here. Only reason I'm even bothering to look at OpenVPN and putting it in my cluster is that I had oh, what the heck is that thing called? It is, oh yeah, so I have one of these guys kicking around, and yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Terraform seems it. I do a lot of my stuff on bare metal, and it pops up a lot when I'm looking at what I need to do on bare metal. And it's usually probably what this guy has on his thing, where he has Terraform and PXE, and the Pixie probably kicks something off that does all of the basic install. Terraform flattens it out and makes it so that it's ready to receive the Ansible security configurations, and like I get why it's useful. I just don't. I have 3 computers. I don't know that it makes sense for me to get into just yet. Oh, 4. I mean, there is the controller as well. I get it. I understand it. I just don't wanna. But yeah, this is a cool little box, but it's end of life, unfortunately. And it's supposed to be used for a whole bunch of stuff. I actually bought it for an install for somebody else that I was consulting on, and they weren't fans of the way that it was set up and didn't want to continue with it. They wanted to go with something more traditional, which ended up being one of the other open source firewall providers. So I just kept it and plugged it in and disabled everything except the VPN, and I've been using it as a VPN. But it's end of life, and they're not going to be updating it anymore. Yeah, pfSense. I was using OpenSense just because of that weird. There was a weird split with Netgate and pfSense where, from what I understand, they tried to sue OpenSense in. I don't remember, but there was a reason not to use pfSense and not to support Netgate. But I still think pfSense is probably getting back to being the better of the two, just because of the amount of support. I mean, OpenSense is fine. I still actually use it internally. Yeah, I mean, they're if I remember right, OpenSense is the open source fork of pfSense, if I'm remembering the conversation correctly. Drama. Yeah, there it is. Netgate had to hand over ownership for a domain. Oh yeah, it was a domain. Just some, like, unprofessional crap back and forth. I mean, funny story to read through. But like, one of the things I actually want to look at the actual OpenVPN access server instead of just a generic OpenVPN. But I also want to, I mean, I've got this cluster running and doing stuff. I really wouldn't mind slowly migrating all of my production stuff into it, and seeing what that looks like. I don't know. The best thing about actually doing that would be, at least I can then say, hey, now I need a new cluster. Actually, OpenVPN's not too hard. I've done it a couple of times. My one gripe with WiredGuard is that it's, from all of the setup that I've seen, it seems to be built around the idea of being point-to-point, whereas OpenVPN is more road warrior setup. That is not having set up WireGuard. I have not installed, I have not actually run off of WireGuard, but I've done OpenVPN now 3 or 4 times. I do plan on actually doing a WireGuard as well at some point. Just because, I mean, I haven't done it, so that's kind of the point, right? Like, I'm not going to Reddit. 7 key differences. I don't need to know what they are. I'm not worried about speeds. OpenVPN uses OpenSSL. Yeah. Security. There's that. Go away. No known security flaws. Okay, what was the one? Privacy. Well, that's the DNS server side, right? Oh, that's nice. I'm still actually on cable. I haven't switched over to fiber yet. We've had a couple companies coming through trying to see like, hey, would you be interested in fiber if we set it up? You know, trying to justify the infrastructure build out. Public and allowed IP. Yeah, this I think is the part. Storing your IP address on the server, so it's much more specific setups. Oof. I don't miss those days. Nordlinks. That's fun. But realistically, even before I switch completely over to installing a new OpenVPN, I'm probably going to do user access management first. Because right now it's easy. It's all handled by the box. But the moment I have to manage it myself, it'll be time to change some stuff. The funny thing is, setting up OpenVPN to be a point-to-point is fairly difficult, actually. It's a lot harder than I thought it would be. I've only ever done that once, but I mean, once it's working, it's great. But it took a lot more effort than I thought it was going to. But I'm curious about the access server portion of it, because I know this is the access server portion, if I'm remembering correctly, is the paid side of it, which is kind of what I'm screwing around with right now. But realistically, I'm not even screwing around with OpenVPN. I'm more just screwing around with Kubernetes and creating pods from scratch. I'm not really worried about which one it is. I just happened to pick it because it was in my brain. I need to be looking here. So in theory, just for the sake of this, security is in the container level. And I know there's a reason that this person has it in a busy box. But I'm just screwing around. It's not staying like this. Let's see if that gets rid of it. Nope. Actually, let's just delete the pod and find out. Pods, you. Bye. Nope, still doesn't like it. Spec containers. Privileged. Where were you on that one? Privileged? You let me do that? Still saying the user doesn't exist. Go away. Group already exists. That's a lot more ports than it says it needed. Actually, that's on Dev Mini 3. So if I look at Dev Mini 3, wow. I'm just having a brain. One of those days, holy cow. I spent my weekend working in Windows and suddenly I forgot how to get an IP address. All right, so in theory, I also want a service that does that now. So right now, the pod is available and it has its ports a-showing. What you mean? You're supposed to be... Hates my freedom. Glad I could help. Take care. And have a good night. Good talking to you again. Oh, it's past 5 o'clock. I should be calling it too. And I think I will. Good to talk to you again, Roddy. Numplex, glad you could stop by. Tomato, good to see you again. Anybody who was just lurking, thanks for wasting some time with me. Let me transition here. Wow. Today was a good day. Probably pick this up again tomorrow. Bye, everybody.